I want to ask you about another issue. Just recently, there was this issue of the search warrant for the search of former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago property.
Yeah.
And it authorized the use of deadly force for the FBI agents, standard boilerplate language. But you and others have described it as an assassination attempt on the former president. That's just not true. Why would you say something like that?
Well, first of all, my view of it is very simple. You have the FBI going in to do this raid on Mar-a-Lago. This is not like any other raid that they would do. FBI agents who did that raid did not want to do it. They didn't think it was necessary. And this is all politically motivated at the end because Merrick Garland wanted that to happen. Merrick Garland wanted the scenes, which your network did cover, of going into Mar-a-Lago.
Congressman, with all due respect, the language for the search is standard operating procedure for every operation of that kind that the FBI does. They did the same thing when they searched Joe Biden's house.
Yes, but I would say
so how is that weaponizing
what I would say when they searched
Joe Biden weaponizing
when they searched Joe Biden's house, there weren't all the networks, from my recollection, with helicopters flying over the beach house in Rehoboth Beach, going to find the classified documents in his garage that he took when he was the vice president and when he was the United States senator, which, by the way, is a violation of the Espionage Act.
Congressman, I'm talking about
They didn't do that.
I'm talking about
they didn't politicize
conspiracy theory.
They didn't politicize
Congressman, I'm talking about the conspiracy theory that the FBI was trying to assassinate Trump.
Well, let's talk
Would
about,
you acknowledge that that is not true?
Well, let's talk about what's fact. Let's talk about what's fact.
Just a real simple question.
What's fact
is it true or false that the FBI was trying to assassinate Trump?
What's fact is that Joe Biden violated the Espionage Act. He did it with impunity.
I just want to know.
Robert Hur is not prosecuting
Congressman,
him
I just want to know that you are not responding to a very simple question about a conspiracy theory that you voiced.
What conspiracy theory?
That the FBI, by having on a document that they are authorized to use deadly force, was trying to harm or assassinate former President Trump. That is false. Will you acknowledge that?
Can I be very clear with you?
Sure.
I'm not sure what Merrick Garland is trying to do these days.
So the answer
because
is
it is
no.
clear that the Department of Justice is being weaponized against Donald Trump. That is clear.
That's pretty extraordinary.
That they're weaponized against Donald Trump. That's not extraordinary. That's what's happening right now.
It's pretty extraordinary that when faced with really clear facts, very clear facts, it's pretty much black and white, you won't acknowledge it. I'm trying to understand why.
Abby, we just had this conversation.
Is it because the former president himself has raised this conspiracy that you feel like you have to support it?
I've not even talked to the president about this. You asked me a question about the FBI raid. I'm telling you, we are witnessing a weaponization of the Department of Justice against a political rival because Donald Trump had documents covered under the Presidential Records Act. They raided Mar-a-Lago.
I'm not litigating.
Joe Biden had documents, and there's no prosecution because he's a senile old man.
I'm not arguing with you
that's not even equal justice.
The validity of the charges. It's a simple question of whether the raid was carried out in a way that was standard operating procedure for the FBI. And as I'm sure you know, the Republican Party calls themselves a party of law and order.
Yes, of course.
The FBI, as law enforcement officers, they go and they execute search warrants every day under the threat of violence. And they have to have that language every single time to protect themselves. In this case, though, they coordinated with the president's lawyers. They coordinated with the Secret Service. Why would you insinuate that that was some kind of attempt at former President Trump's life?
Abby, I'm not making any insinuation.
It's very simple to just say that's not true.
The only thing I'm saying is that what we have witnessed is an uneven application of the law by the Department of Justice. You had Hillary Clinton, Hillary Clinton violated the Espionage Act. There were no charges.
You're changing
Joe Biden
the subject.
Because the purpose of the warrant is because of classified material, is it not?
I'm not talking about
But you have an
purpose
unequal
of the warrant.
application of the law.
I'm talking about
you have a two-tier system of justice that you don't want to actually acknowledge.
When you tell your supporters and the former president's supporters that there was a government attempt on the former president's life, and that is not true. That is a major insinuation, and it deserves to be walked back. It deserves to be walked back.
I would argue right now, if you look at the actions of Jack Smith and Merrick Garland, there is an attempt to incarcerate Donald Trump over foolishness because they cannot win a political election. And they have lost their minds collectively. And they have decided that whether it's the documents case or this foolish January 6th case, which has no true merit, or what's happening here in Manhattan with Alvin Bragg, that they have chosen to use the justice system for political purposes and interfere in elections. That's not a conspiracy theory, Abby. That's a real situation. We should be talking about not about what's written in the FBI document.
Congressman, You talked about that. You tweeted about
talk
the
about a lot of
FBI
things.
document. You're the one changing the subject, but I do want to make one last note because we have to go. But you've been asked this before. I'm going to ask you again, just for the record. If Donald Trump loses the election in 2024, will you accept the results of that election?
My answer has been very clear on this. If the states,
It's a yes or no question.
If the states and localities actually follow rules and procedures, and everybody sees the rules followed, then of course you accept what's done. But what you cannot have
It's a yes or no
are
question.
judges and municipalities and districts not following law passed by state legislatures. That has led us to the problems we have in our elections. That's where you have Republicans and Democrats object to elections. And so
Fair
again,
to say
we just
that
want to have a clear process.
so your answer is conditional based on.
My answer is always conditional because you want to see the processes of the election actually go according to law, not according to outside groups and legal cases that come up, and they do come up.
The legal cases are how they adjudicate whether they are done by law. So, I think that is definitely on the table.
You should follow the
as a
law.
way
That's
to
what the
adjudicate it.
Constitution says.
Congressman Byron Donalds, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us.